walking, healing, and embracing detachment. Join us in this captivating podcast as we sit down with monk Minh Tue, a wandering monk whose profound philosophy on life and spiritual practice inspires introspection. Addressing concerns about his health and unconventional lifestyle, he explains that physical ailments are natural, viewing the body as a temporary vessel not to be overly pampered. His practices, barefoot walking, fasting after noon, and sleeping under the stars, are not self-denial, but deliberate choices to foster detachment from worldly desires and heighten spiritual awareness. Monk Minh Tue clarifies he's no savior or idol, but a guide encouraging others to look within, embrace life's challenges with balance, and prioritize inner peace over material comfort or physical perfection.
Hey, welcome to the Deep Dive. We're stepping into a fascinating space today, pulling directly from a source you shared with us. It's a YouTube transcript.
Yeah, an interesting one.
It captures a conversation between, well, a doctor and this practitioner whose life path is. This is pretty remarkable, the extensive walking, the very simple lifestyle.
Definitely outside the norm.
And there's a lot swirling around him, isn't there? Rumors about his health. People are really curious about the hardship they see, maybe even projecting things onto his public image.
That happens a lot, yeah.
So our mission in this deep dive is, well, pretty clear. We want to try and filter out some of that noise and really zoom in on his voice, his perspective, straight from this conversation transcript.
Get it from the source.
Exactly. What does he actually say about his health challenges? How does he, frame the difficulties people perceive in his life? And crucially, what does he say is the meaning behind this journey he's chosen? You said the source because, well, you're looking for the reality behind the headlines, and we're going to try and unpack it with you.
And I think the real value here is that direct access, right? It lets us sort of bypass the speculation, the rumors, and hear the individual's own thoughts. We get to explore the deeper why, the fundamental reasons driving a life lived so intentionally outside the mainstream.
Okay, so let's get into it. Let's unpack this, starting with the immediate thing the doctor raises. They talk about the practitioner's health.
Right, the rumors.
Yeah, people are hearing he's sick, maybe coughing a lot. The transcript uses this phrase, hosu, which sounds pretty persistent.
Gives you a real image. Yeah.
And the doctor, from a medical standpoint, he's concerned. He understands the physical toll of walking constantly, day after day.
Of course. The body has limits.
Exactly. He sees those limits and asks him straight up, are you okay? Are you looking after yourself?
And the practitioner's response is, well, it sets the tone, doesn't it? He acknowledges the rumors. He accepts the doctor's concern is valid.
But then there's that touch of humor.
Yeah, that's right. He says hearing people worry actually makes him feel happy, kind of like an old man in the village being fussed over by neighbors about taking cough medicine.
It's disarming.
It is. And then he makes this really foundational statement. I am a regular person, not some kind of celestial being dong immune to physical stuff.
Just human.
Just human. He explains, simply, the body reacts. Sun, wind, dust. It happens. Coughing. That's normal when you're thirsty.
And the joke about the cough choosing its audience.
Right. Coughing loudly when it's quiet, just for fun, but holding back in a crowd, it makes him seem very relatable, very human.
But that human detail leads into something deeper, doesn't it?
Yeah.
His whole philosophy about the body.
Absolutely. It's such a stark contrast to the doctor's view of biological limits and managing health.
He calls the body impermanent, like borrowed clothes.
Exactly. And the analogy continues. Like clothes, they wear out. If they're torn, rush-roy, you patch them. Va. But if you can't patch them anymore, kongla debak, then what? You put your hands together and thank it. Chapte kamen for the service it's given you.
Wow. Accepting the wear and tear.
Completely. And he admits he gets tired. If he cannot walk, then sit. Cannot sit, then lie down under a tree. It's practical.
And he shares that story, the one about the high fever when he was alone in the forest.
Oh, yeah. That's powerful. He didn't panic, didn't seek help, just covered himself up, chanted the great compassion mantra.
Let the fever break naturally.
Sweated it out, and then just got up and kept walking the next morning. It really illustrates that philosophy in action.
It does, and it shows his core approach to practice, right?
Precisely.
Yeah.
And he's careful. He says he doesn't tell others to copy him exactly. That's important.
Right. Not a prescription.
No. But he suggests that maybe being too careful with the body, too protective, it can actually weaken the mind.
Interesting. So pampering it isn't always the answer.
That seems to be his point. Letting it be natural, giving it, quote, just enough care, might make it more durable in the long run.
And the analogy he uses, the worn sandal.
Ah, yes. That's brilliant. If you stop wearing an old sandal, put it away, it just breaks down, crumbles.
Yeah, they do that.
But if you keep wearing it, keep using it, it actually becomes more durable, more resilient. It completely flips our usual idea of taking care of things, including ourselves. Comfort doesn't equal strength in this view.
That idea of the body as a tool, something made stronger through use. It leads right into the next big thing the doctor asks about. The lifestyle, the perceived hardship.
Yeah, the tough stuff people see from the outside.
Walking barefoot, eating and drinking minimally, sleeping, sitting up. The doctor lists these things and then asks that huge question. What is it all for?
Is it worth it?
Yeah. Do you really need to suffer this much just to practice? It's the question everyone's thinking.
And this is where we get right to the heart of his motivation. His definition of gain, or duc, in Vietnamese. He acknowledges the doctor's questions are fair, they show care, but he points out that people looking from a worldly perspective, they only see the difficulty, the call, the lack, the yo.
They don't see the gain.
They don't see the duc. And he draws this clear parallel. He says, worldly people endure hardship all the time, working crazy hours, dealing with stress.
Right, to gain money, houses, status.
Exactly, tangible things. He says he endures hardship, the walking, the alms rounds, to gain something different, something internal.
Which is?
Peaceful mind, that's the phrase, pai tam yin, or a mind that no longer grasps anything, that's the gain for him.
An internal freedom.
Yes, and he tells that story about being caught in the rain at a bus stop, soaking wet, looking like a torn blanket.
Vivid image.
And people asked him where he was going. His answer, to a tranquil mind.
And they thought he was joking.
They thought it was a joke. But for him, that was the literal truth. That's the destination.
And he gets specific about these gains, right? It's not just vague peace.
No, not at all. He lists things like actively reducing anger, sand, delusion, and greed, then. These are concrete goals.
How does the lifestyle help with that?
Well, take money, for instance. By not taking or keeping money, he says it frees the mind directly from the worry about managing it or the fear of losing it.
Makes sense. Less to cling to.
Exactly. And sitting up. He says it's not self-torture. It's a conscious practice to stay mindful, even through the night.
And the physical tiredness. That seems counterintuitive.
Right. But he says it's actually helpful. His phrase is, only when the body is weary does the mind accept to turn inward. Then,
So comfort makes the mind lazy.
that's his take. Abundance, ease, they can lead to complacency. The mind doesn't feel the need to look deeper.
And the analogy he uses for this long-term gain, the orange tree.
Ah, yes. That's another powerful one. Imagine planting an orange tree for 3 years. Nothing. No fruit. People might laugh, say you're wasting your time.
Right. Seems pointless.
But then, in the 4th year, it bears sweet fruit. And suddenly, everyone wants some. His practice, he says, is like those first 3 years, enduring hardship now for a future fruit that nobody can ever take away from you.
And that fruit is?
A mind that knows sufficiency. A mind that simply doesn't demand more.
Contentment.
Deep contentment. And he connects it back to that fever experience in the forest. He said afterwards, the biggest change wasn't physical recovery, it was mental. His mind just stopped craving things. He felt light as clouds. That was the fruit.
Okay, but here's where the confusion comes in for a lot of people, and the doctor voices it. If you practice so diligently, live so simply, why do you still get sick? Doesn't that contradict the practice?
Yeah, it seems like a conflict, doesn't it? But he makes a really crucial distinction here.
Which is?
Sickness, he says, that's the body's business. Practice, that's the mind's business. They're related but distinct.
Even the Buddha got sick, he points out.
Exactly. Practice isn't about becoming invincible, like turning into a block of stone. It's about learning to see pain, see illness clearly, without being dragged down by it, without the mind adding layers of fear, complaint, resentment.
And he shared that other story about the abdominal pain during meditation.
Yes. When someone asked if it hurt, he basically said, of course it hurts. How could it not? Practice isn't turning yourself into stone.
It's about the response to the pain.
Precisely. He brings up the forest fever again. Physically, he was definitely ill, but mentally, he was clear, he was chanting, focused, and he woke up feeling light. He accepts the body's fragility among man.
So the practice is in how you meet the illness.
Exactly. Accepting it without complaint, without blaming anything or anyone, without fearing death, not letting the mind get entangled in the body's condition.
He also used that comparison to bodybuilders, didn't he? The own luck setup gym.
Right. Pushing back against the idea that practice equals physical perfection, these guys train incredibly hard, look super strong.
But can still get injured easily.
Yeah, a simple fall, something unexpected, his own lifestyle walking, simple food, sitting sleep it might lead to a cough, or feeling tired. But he says he doesn't fall easily, doesn't make a big fuss, doesn't groan. He just smiles, keeps going.
The car and driver analogy comes in here too.
Perfect analogy. The body is the car, the mind is the driver. The car might get scratched, dented, have engine trouble.
But if the driver is calm and steady?
They can still reach the destination. The state of the car doesn't have to determine the outcome if the driver knows what they're doing.
So the goal isn't a perfect car.
No. The goal is a steady driver. Cultivating a mind that doesn't torment the body with fear, anxiety, negativity. He's just a lot of illness actually stems from those mental states anyway.
So he can be sick, but his mind is peaceful, Damien.
Right. So he meets the sickness with acceptance, maybe even a smile, and continues his path. The effectiveness of the practice isn't measured by never getting sick, but by how you handle sickness without adding extra suffering or drama.
Okay, that makes sense. But it leads to the doctor's next practical concern: the complete lack of conventional medical safety nets.
Yeah, no checkups, no medicine on hand, no insurance, no one designated to care for him if things go really wrong.
So the doctor asks, point blank, what happens if you get seriously ill? Like really unable to function?
And his answer is, wow. Just incredibly direct and accepting. If he gets that sick, he says he'd just sit quietly, Minh and chant.
Relying on chance.
Completely. Relying on chance, kindness. Maybe someone walking by sees him, feels compassion, offers some porridge or medicine.
And if no one helps?
Then he says very calmly, maybe it's time to lie down. Just accept it.
That's radical acceptance.
It is. And he contrasts it. He says many people have full insurance, access to the best care, but still die feeling lonely or afraid.
Good point.
He suggests that dying by the roadside, but with a fearless, peaceful mind, is still dying in the path. He's not aiming for a beautiful death scene, just one that doesn't cause trouble or burden for others.
Does he disrespect medicine then?
No, he explicitly says he respects doctors. But his personal choice is to let his body follow what he calls natural law. However, and this is a key clarification he makes,
Yes.
if medicine can help him continue his practice and someone offers it out of kindness, he will take it. He says, Nelvin conchu dothi conse unthuk. If the body can still tolerate it, I will take the medicine.
So it's not a blind rejection of help.
Not at all. Practice isn't about blind faith or stubbornness. It's about knowing what you're doing, using the body as a vehicle for practice, and accepting help if it arises through favorable conditions through Duyin.
And he told that story about the diabetic patient.
Right, who stopped their medicine to focus on practice. He questioned them about the potential burden, later hospital costs, needing intensive care. It shows he thinks about consequences, about not causing trouble. It's not a simple reject all medicine stance. It's nuanced.
That reliance on circumstance on Duyen, it connects to what the doctor observes about how the public reacts to him, right? The misplaced faith.
Yeah, the doctor sees people praying to him, seeking miracles, treating statues, or even teachers like wish-granting machines. Believing faith alone will cure physical illness.
What's the practitioner's take on that?
He calls it a reflection of the deepest human psychology. He sees people treating the Buddha himself like a god to grant favors.
That's not the point, is it?
Not according to him. He emphasizes the Buddha only showed the way. You have to walk the path yourself to find freedom. He feels many people cling to external things, rituals, teachers out of fear, not real understanding.
So bowing and praying isn't the answer.
He says bowing is good if it's about recognizing goodness, cultivating humility, but not if it's just trying to bargain your way out of suffering or sickness. Illness has physical roots, he says, but also mental ones: anger, sadness, stress.
So getting close to a teacher isn't for magic healing.
No, it's for calming the mind, gaining clarity. Real healing, he suggests, starts with seeing the source of the problem, like fixing the leak in the roof, not just putting down more buckets to catch the drips.
Relying on charms or just prayers?
He feels it just increases worry and delusion because you're avoiding reality. True practice for him is living mindfully, clearly, day by day. He thinks the Buddha wants us to wake up, not stay stuck in tears and delusion.
So bowing is for a clear mind, not getting rid of sickness itself.
Exactly. Cultivating a clear mind, living in a way that doesn't create new illness through negativity or harmful actions. That's the focus.
Okay. Now, speaking of people's reactions, the doctor brings up something really difficult. The people who make huge life changes to follow him.
Oh, yes. Selling homes, quitting jobs, even divorcing partners.
How does the practitioner feel about that?
He admits it feels incredibly heavy. He uses the phrase, like, a burden I know I cannot carry.
Does he encourage it?
Absolutely not. He's very clear. He does not tell people to leave their lives behind. He understands they're projecting their hopes onto him.
Seeing him as a savior.
Yeah, like a light, a savior, the last life raft. They're desperate, but he insists, I'm just a person learning to practice.
Following him physically isn't the answer.
No. He says it doesn't guarantee peace. He really urges people to look deeply at their actual motivation. Are you truly drawn to the path of practice itself? Li tung tu fak?
Or
Or are you just running away, trying to escape a difficult marriage, escape life's problems, escape your own suffering? Chetron huntron dotron ko.
he pushes it back inward.
Always. Peace comes from looking inside, resolving your own stuff,
Right.
not from chasing someone else externally. He genuinely fears being turned into an idol
Why?
because of the inevitable crash. If people build him up as a perfect saint and then they see his human flaws, which he readily admits he has, their faith gets shattered.
And not just facing him.
Exactly. That's his fear. They might lose faith in the entire path and the possibility of goodness or awakening. That's a heavy responsibility.
And that relates directly to the criticism he faces, right? People calling him fake, saying it's just for show. The doctor compares it to the scrutiny doctor's face.
Yeah. Trust is fragile, and his response to criticism is, well, it's remarkable again. No defensiveness.
What does he say?
He says he hears it all. And sometimes, he admits, the critics might actually be right. Not because they understand his path, necessarily,
But because?
because he still has flaws. Konkanse, I still make mistakes. He says he's felt anger, sadness, irritation, just like anyone.
So if people say he's not practiced enough,
He accepts it, says he learns from it. If someone accuses him of being deceitful, he says his first step is to look inside himself, honestly. Is there any truth to it?
that takes courage.
It really does. He even confesses that sometimes, deep down, he still hopes people will understand him or like him. And in those moments, he says, the criticism about having an ego or seeking validation is actually spot on because he's still grasping.
Wow.
He accepts people have the right to doubt him. His only right, he feels, is not to react with anger or negativity.
True living needs no defense.
But the person trying to live truly needs sincere, ongoing practice. His deepest fear isn't personal attack, but that one of his mistakes could make people lose faith in the whole path, in the Buddhist teachings.
That's a lot of pressure.
Huge. He says he can't promise perfection, only that he'll bow and learn when he messes up, and he just hopes that won't derail others' faith in something bigger than him.
Let's circle back for a moment to the lifestyle itself. The no money, no phone, no bed.
Yeah.
It seems so extreme. Is he just being incredibly harsh on himself?
He doesn't frame it as harshness or self-torment. He sees it as a conscious choice, a specific practice method,
To achieve what?
to see the mind more clearly, without the buffer of comfort. Not having money, for example, is a direct way to test his trust in cause and effect, in circumstance, in duyen. Will needs be met through kindness.
Okay. And no bed.
That's a constant physical reminder that the body is just earth, temporary, not something to be overly cherished or pampered. Sleeping outside, exposed to the dew and the elements, he feels it helps shrink the ego.
So it's not hating the body.
No, not treating it as an enemy, but refusing to let its demands for comfort rule the mind. He found that this chosen discomfort actually made his mind clearer, lighter.
Setting limits to learn simplicity.
Exactly. That's how he puts it. Learning to live lightly, clearly, mindfully shedding the weight of things, expectations, and even comforts that can clutter up the mind.
Given how unique his path is, the doctor brings up his role in society. If everyone did this, the medical system might collapse. What's his contribution?
His view is incredibly humble here. He says everyone has a different path, a different role. Some practice like him, some heal others, some build things. Society needs all kinds.
So he's not saying everyone should copy him.
Definitely not. He walks this way, he says, not as a model for everyone, but just to show that another way of living, a simpler way, is actually possible.
And choosing not to seek medical care.
It's not disrespect for doctors, he clarifies again. For him, it's part of his practice of learning to face and let go of the deep fear of sickness and death.
So he doesn't see himself as some kind of savior.
Not at all.
Yeah.
He uses this beautiful image. He's just like a shadow passing through the market of life.
A shadow.
Yeah, just someone whose quiet presence might make people pause for a second, reflect on their own lives, their own priorities, where they're going.
So his contribution is being authentic.
Pretty much. Living authentically according to his understanding, letting others witness that, hoping it might spark something in them, lighten their own minds, and maybe most importantly, just keeping his own mind steady and clear. That's his work.
Which leads us to that final, really profound question the doctor asks in the source.
Ah, yes. The ultimate question.
If he were to fall down somewhere, totally alone, unseen, unheard by anyone, with the whole journey, all the walking, all the effort, would it still have meaning?
It's a heavy question, and his answer is so honest, so human, but also so rooted in his practice.
What does he say?
He admits, just as a human being, there's probably some underlying desire to be seen, to be remembered. Dying alone might feel sad on that basic level.
Sure, that makes sense.
But then he immediately brings it back to the core purpose he talked about earlier. If the real goal was internal transformation, cultivating that peaceful, non-grasping mind, then every single step, every moment of practice.
It had meaning in itself.
Exactly. Regardless of any audience, the meaning was in the doing, in the internal change, not in external recognition.
And he has a hope for that scenario, doesn't he?
Yeah, a quiet hope. If he does fall unseen, he hopes to the first kind person who happens to find him. Well, he hopes they bow. Not necessarily to him, but to their own sudden realization.
A realization of what?
Of life's brevity, maybe, its impermanence. And the quiet ways sincere people sometimes just depart. A quiet death, he says, is actually good. It doesn't trouble anyone.
So even in that imagined lonely end.
There's still meaning. If his passing, however unnoticed, makes just one person stop, think deeply about life, about practice, then yes, the whole journey still held profound meaning for him.
Wow. Okay, let's try to summarize the key things we've unpacked from this deep dive from his perspective.
Right.
There's his radical acceptance of the body's limits, seeing it as borrowed clothes, not something to be coddled.
Right. Impermanent and to be used mindfully.
Then there's the reframing of suffering, not as something negative to avoid at all costs, but actually as a necessary path towards inner peace, towards that mind that knows sufficiency.
Yeah, hardship as a tool for mental cultivation, not just physical endurance.
We also saw how he deals with all the public attention and misunderstanding, grounding himself in practice, accepting criticism, not getting caught up in defending an image.
Mm-hmm. Focusing inward, not on external validation.
And fundamentally, his focus is on that internal transformation over any kind of external success or even physical well-being conventionally defined.
Absolutely. It's a path that really challenges our usual ideas about health, about what success means, about the purpose of life itself.
His approach forces you to question basic assumptions, doesn't it? About practice, faith, where we look for security.
It really does. Do we rely on external systems, comforts, other people's approval? Or do we cultivate something internal resilience, clarity, peace? His life poses that question starkly.
Our goal here was to use this source you shared to get a clearer view, straight from his own words, of this life that sparks so much interest and, yeah, a lot of confusion, too.
Hopefully hearing his perspective directly helps cut through some of the noise and sheds light on the reality behind the image.
So as you're thinking about his journey, his idea of being a mind that knows sufficiency, maybe here's a question to carry with you.
Okay.
Given his perspective on letting go of grasping, what does true sufficiency actually look like in your own life?
Or maybe think about this. Where do you tend to look for reassurance, or maybe even for miracles when you face difficulties? And what might happen if instead you tried turning inward, like he suggests?
Good questions to ponder. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.